Here is the story on Yemen. To help in the Yemen war, all China had to do was be reasonable. And that's a bit of a confusing title. It sounds like it's a dig at China. Why weren't they reasonable until now? But no, and by the way, I hate this writer, but and speaks to his dumb headline. It's a confusing headline. He's saying that the U.S. is not reasonable, and all China had to do was be reasonable, and they were able to create peace in Yemen. With Joe Biden nowhere to be found, China's diplomacy set a stage for Saudi concessions and ceasefire talks. And again, this is a little bit this is kind of controlled opposition. This is a little bit of the wording sounds kind of edgy for mainstream media. Like mainstream media would never say something like that. However, would never say, all China had to do was be reasonable, etc. However, the fact that Biden is nowhere to be seen sounds like, it wasn't on Biden's plate, right? Every day they put his little lobster bib on him because he does drool a lot at this stage in life. And they put a little lobster bib on him and they serve him his plate that has the things he's supposed to pay attention to that day. And let's be honest, it's not him paying attention to them. It's a fucking 47-year-old sociopath sitting there with a fucking smartphone that Joe Biden doesn't even know how to turn on. That's who's making the decisions. But still, is Biden, they give him a little plate and they're acting like, The Intercept is acting like he just wasn't paying attention to Yemen and Saudi Arabia. That's not at all. It's that, and again, this comes back to the petrodollar. The petrodollar deal is with Saudi Arabia. They sell stuff in oil, sell stuff in dollars, and we give them all of our military protection. Now you are seeing a beginning of a rift between that agreement. And because the U.S. is weakening, they're not so scared of us anymore, at least our military. And they are now stepping outside of what the U.S. wants to some degree. And for all this time, we have been endorsing, helping the war in Yemen. We have been arming it. We have given data to Saudi Arabia. We have helped stop imports of things like medicine and food into Yemen, in order to help Saudi Arabia in this complete destruction of Yemen. I mean, there's an easy argument to be made that this is a genocide that's going on in Yemen. But it's not that we weren't there. It's not that we weren't paying attention to it. It's that we were actively a part of keeping it going, of doing it, of perpetrating it. Anyway, so I think that's a bit of a misstatement that Biden just wasn't paying attention. What's startling here is the apparent role of China and complete absence of the U.S. and President Joe Biden in the deal-making. Biden promised to end the war in Yemen 2 years into his presidency. China may have delivered on that promise. I love that. That's from the executive vice president of the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. Decades of militarized American foreign policy in the Middle East have enabled China to play the role of peacemaker, while Washington is stuck and unable to offer much more than arms deals and increasingly unconvincing security assurances. Yeah, because every time the U.S. says we'll promise we'll do this or that, we always break all our promises. So why the hell, even for our so-called allies, why the hell would you believe anything the U.S. says? Why would you be like, they promised they're going to protect me? I mean, right now, Zelensky is listening to U.S. promises. Well, the U.S. said they got my back on this. Oh, yeah, do they? Do they, Zelensky? I think they do until they don't. So you might want to watch that. There's no reason to ever believe anything we say. Okay, so, and I also love the idea that Biden promised to end the war in Yemen, did nothing about it, and now China has ended the war in Yemen. So China is delivering on Biden's presidential campaign promises, which breaking news, China also said they're going to end all student debt for Americans. They're going to give us all health care. They're going to give us $15 minimum wage. China's going to do that for us any minute now. So, all the things Joe Biden said he was going to do that he had no intention of doing. And also, let's be honest, forgot he said 30 seconds later. So this is huge news. Barely any coverage in the mainstream. There obviously it doesn't mean you can't find a New York a propagandistic styled New York Times article about this, but it's the difference between our mainstream media and our cable news outlets doing 24/7 Trump's sitting in a room coverage uh, versus one article in the back of New York Times. That's the difference of coverage. So this is a major story, but it makes China sound pretty good, right? Being the good guys, creating peace. And the truth is, if you look at China's record, someone wrote China 2024. China 2024. The truth is, if you look at China's record, and this does not mean everything I say about China is positive. If you go back and watch the hour I just did on it, live stream, you will not see that everything I said is positive. But if you go back and look at China's record on over the past many decades over war, they're not invading countries. They have one military base outside of China, whereas the US has 800 to 900. They're not creating coups. They're not assassinating people in other countries. The US is doing all of those things, all of them. So it doesn't mean you got to like every policy out of China, but right now, this current version of China, way more peaceful than the United States, way more.